Hi there, my name's Gill Tiney. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome to Being Human, Hidden Depths by Collaboration Global, and my name is Gill Tiney, and I am delighted to say that today we have one of our new members, Darren Owen. I nearly called you Owens then, so I don't know why I wanted to put an S on the end of your name. Welcome to the podcast, Darren. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for the welcome.
It's really interesting to have a conversation with you because we often, as we've just done for the last 5-10 minutes, go off in tangents all over the place around business, but also around purpose and what you want to do with your life and what you're planning to do to make a difference in the world. And that is basically what Collaboration Global is about, is helping people to maximize what their purpose is and to help them to connect with as many people as possible. You've only been a member for a relatively short time. How did you find out about us? I'm just curious. Was it, did you go to my website like some people do, or how did you find out about us?
It was through LinkedIn. I think it was a mutual contact that was coming to a meeting, and I came along to a meeting, and I just thought I'll come along because I like going to meetings and listen to what other people have to say to things.
Yeah.
And you, myself, and one other person was on a one-to-one session, and you were telling me about what you do with Collaboration Global, and it really sort of rung a bell with me in that I've got a big plan, and one of the things I've learned over the last couple of years is I can't be everywhere and do everything, which is a big lesson that I had to learn, one of many. And I thought, well, actually, collaboration is where I know I need to be. My whole business is based on collectivism, and collectivism is another form of collaboration.
Yeah.
So it was like, actually, that sounds like the place I need to be sat, be in that meeting and meet the people who are collaborating and helping with each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because some people just get collaboration like that, and you called it in another sort of format, but it's along the same lines, collectivism. I love that phrase that you used. But there are some people out there that want to get collaboration and don't understand it or think they get it, and they haven't quite got the nuance of what we're about. And yes, collaboration can be about teamwork and it can be about cooperation. But in our definition, it's more about love and connection, and lack of ego, and a mindset of abundance in order to support and help each other get more from what they want. What would you say collectivism is for you?
It's very similar. I mean, the collectivism comes from Marxism, right, where everybody works for the greater good, and looking at actually how your actions have an impact on everybody else. So if you're manufacturing, for instance, and you're manufacturing something that generates a lot of carbon footprint, there is an impact to that. And collectivism is about looking at that as a whole rather than just yourself. So seeing that actually, yeah, I can manufacture this widget and I can make lots and lots of money for that, but I'm killing the planet. I'm killing somebody else. I'm hurting somebody else in the process of doing that. And it's about thinking more openly about actually what is the damage that I do and can I minimize it? It's not about not producing that product. It's not about not generating wealth. It's about making sure that when we do that, we minimize the impact on other people and actually thinking about everybody else. And it's also going down onto a social level where your actions have a bit greater impact. So rather than actually just thinking about what is good for me, it's actually sometimes I can't do what's good for me because it's going to impact everybody else. The things like polluting the atmosphere. If you've got a big factory and it's dishing out a load of chemicals into a river, you're polluting your local environment. It's the joke from Simpsons with the three-eyed fish. you know, that is something that's going to happen, and people are eating that fish and therefore they're going to get poisoned. Those people are your employees. So eventually you lose the employees to produce your product, and then you can't produce your product anymore. Whereas if you just look after your local economy, your local ecological area, you can actually then make more money and do more and grow more as a group. So it's about raising the bar rather than actually, you know, beating people up with it.
Yeah, I think that is the thing at the moment, with social media, news media. There is this kind of, was it cancel culture of like, you've done this wrong and that's wrong and you shouldn't be doing that. You can't say that, and all of this kind of, that statue's in the wrong place or the wrong statue or whatever. And I think 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we were all desperately consuming everything because that was helping the economy, and we didn't really think about the bigger picture, because the world is big enough. It can cope if we cut down a few trees. It doesn't really matter if we pollute the rivers, because there's so many rivers, it's fine. And now, because of technology and the advancement of science, we now know how much we are polluting everything, and we're on a finite line now. We can't keep carrying on. So I feel, and I'm hoping that we're at, because of the pandemic, because that's brought everybody together, we are now on this cusp of tipping into the full realization that the big companies cannot sell in order to look after their shareholders. They have to sell in order to look after the planet and humanity. And I think that's out there now, but I think it's taking a lot. It's like the tanker is slowly moving around to go, well, how do we do that? How do we look after the planet first and shareholders second? I mean, we need to look after our employees. We need to look after our customers. We need to look after our shareholders. We need to look after the planet. There's a lot of people to look after before you then find out if you've got any money in the bag at the end of it.
See, this is where, so this is a good segue into what I do, because my whole thing's about shareholders. I don't like the idea of actually the money going straight to shareholders, because you're dehumanizing the decision making. So as soon as you have shareholders in a corporation, the corporations grow as big as they want to get. But shareholders are not humans usually. The shareholdership is usually a fund, which is then run by somebody, which is owned by other funds, which are then run by somebody, which are owned by other funds. But all those people running the funds, their one sole purpose is, how do I make more money? So all the decisions of those funds are based upon money. And yes, there's a human there to make the decision, but they're not directly involved with the money. It's not their money. They're gambling on other people's money, and therefore they make the best decisions because they make more money by making good decisions for other people. So all the decisions are made based on money. Whereas if you look at the ecological impact of those decisions, they wouldn't do half of them. If you look at things like buying products from overseas, we as a country, we've done very well. We've from the Industrial Revolution, where we were polluting so much pollution into the atmosphere, where London used to be smog city. It was just, you couldn't see past your hand. We've cleaned all that up and we've got a great atmosphere now. The Thames is almost clean enough to walk in. You know, you won't, you know, disintegrate when you put your foot in it anymore. But what we've done is, rather than actually solving the problem, we've just moved that to China.
Yes.
And by doing that, we've done that to save a couple of quid on the cost of staff, because if we produced our products we needed in the UK, staff costs are higher. The ecological impact is higher, and it's on our doorstep. So people see it. So they see what the impact of buying these plastic products are. And it's harder to then pretend that this is a green product. We ship it over to China. We move it all the way. So we ship all the production in China. They dig up the atmosphere, the ground. They pull up all the crap out of the ground. They pollute the atmosphere. They do all the rivers and pollute the rivers. They pay their staff pennies in the pound. And then we get this product shipped to us by lots of carbon again. And it's nice in a clean packaging. And people are happy with that because, well, yeah, I can buy my iPhone for £1,000. When in reality, that iPhone probably cost to buy by Apple about £100 for manufacturing. And the only way you can manufacture it that cheap is to pollute the atmosphere and to put a load of crap in the atmosphere. But we're willing to still pay that. But if we produced it in the UK, for instance, or in America, the cost of that Apple product would be £2,000 to £3,000. The majority of people would not be able to afford it, which means that you wouldn't have the latest product every year, and Apple would not be one of the fastest growing companies at the time. So they made the decision to offshore everything, save costs, pollute somewhere else so it's not on our doorstep, and now they're reaping the rewards of that. And they continue to reap the rewards, and we sit there and go, oh, well, I've got my latest Apple product, I'm happy because I've got my latest kit. But there's more and more people unemployed. There's more and more people that can't afford anything. And we're getting to the point with AI and tech where there's going to be less and less jobs available to anybody. And we're going to have this revolution where it's all about information, and the physical jobs aren't going to be around because we've shipped them all off to another country. And although I like globalism is great, but you have to do it in a fair way. So my example is socks. I was speaking to a person who's got a charity, and she runs a charity that actually gives socks to Vietnamese children. And the whole thing was she had a nervous breakdown. She had to, she just disappeared from her job, basically, and she found this orphanage, and the kids were running around in the cold, because even though it's Vietnam, it was cold, in flip-flops, and it's not cold enough for shoes, but they need something to keep their feet warm, so socks. And she realized that actually she could just buy them and send them over, so she did. And then she realized actually she could buy them for the local economy, and it made more money. But then they're still being made in Bangladesh for a penny. So a pair of socks over in the UK is £1. In Vietnam, they're 50p, but in Bangladesh, they're a penny. So when you're buying under the global banner, and you're buying from other countries, you're actually keeping those countries poor as well, because that country can't afford to tax their employees. They can't raise enough tax from the employees because they're not earning enough to live, let alone pay tax into the government, which means the government then can't do any support, because there's no support, there's no government, there's no real police, there's no laws, and it's like Wild West. So the whole economy and country is held back because of globalization. But without it, they would have no employment, because there's no structure anymore, because we've taken it, because we then buy all their stuff and ship it all over to the UK. So the impact is massive, and we've got to look at actually what is your true impact. If you're buying stuff from Bangladesh, buy it, definitely, but you don't have to pay the bottom price. Just by raising that price a little bit and ensuring that the staff are paid not necessarily the UK rates, but a decent rate of pay, means that their economy can get better, means that they can get richer, and we can help everybody raise the ship up a little bit. So I've got a whole thing about doing lots of things.
It's a very we all have a piece to play in this way we move forward, isn't it? And it's the choices that we make, and it is money that is the problem and the solution. Because if we choose not to buy certain products, then people will have to take notice, and we do have the power of the pound in our pocket, and how we choose to spend that. And I think people sorry to interrupt you, it is a limited power though. The power you have in your pocket doesn't actually have a lot of power. That most people don't see, that they don't actually have a lot of power, because I was watching an article the other day on YouTube or something, and they were saying the reason why the rich are rich. The reason why the rich are rich is because when you're poor, you have to pay money into a business to buy stuff, and it's the rich that get richer. We have to have a more fairer system, so your pound in your pocket is actually a fair decision maker. And if you wanted to buy better goods, so for instance, you wanted to buy better food and you had £1, your options are limited, because for that £1, you couldn't actually get high quality, locally grown produce, because it just isn't possible to create that for that price. The only way to create cheap produce is to offshore it and put a massive carbon impact to that food. So unless we have other mechanisms, which unfortunately means higher prices for things, that £1 is still worthless. But I think this is where collaboration, collectivism can come in, because when you do like the Me Too movement or Black Lives Matter, when you come together as a mass force, then you can start to make a difference. And I think we have to not necessarily go back to the old ways. I think we have to invent, innovate, create new ways of being in our community, because I don't think the problem is necessarily we don't have enough of this, or there's too many poor people, or there's too many homeless. We have enough of everything. We have enough food to go around, we have enough homes to go around. It's just they're badly distributed.
Yes.
So I think that distribution is our problem for the future. And it's by coming together in Collaboration Global, if we can create enough people together to have a voice, then the things that you've been saying will hopefully be resonated around, and more people will hear it, and then we'll be like, well, okay, so what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? And then the conversations carry on, and we can actually implement small change here, small change here, small change here, join it together, and you can see.
And that's exactly what we need, because we need those small changes. A lot of people, they wait for the one big solution, you know, global climate change.
Yeah,
there isn't one big solution. We're not going to suddenly find one thing. It's like, why? That's the magic ticket. Everybody has to do 100 little things.
Exactly, 100 little things. That's a really good phrase. We should start that. Go and buy it on
yeah, go and
buy the website. 100 little things. It's what one of our members, Gina Gardner, she calls radical responsibility. If we all take that responsibility, you know, not to drop that litter, not to all those, you know, turn the light off, silly little things, but if you do it en masse, it's a huge difference. One of the things that Simon Sinek said on one of his podcasts not so long ago was that we talk about recycling. He said, and what fascinates him is the fact that, you know, we put our recycling together and we put it in a little bin, we put it on the end of our road, our curb, our driveway, whatever, and it goes away. The problem goes away.
Yes.
We've recycled, we've done our bit. Where is away? He said, our away is somebody else's problem. Because that recycling quite often will end up in a heap somewhere in Malaysia, with kids trailing over it, you know, picking up the plastic bags and working out, you know, what they can sell and what they can't sell, because we don't have the proper systems in place to ensure that everything is, you know, recreated or reused or repackaged.
Exactly.
Along the way.
There's been a big thing recently during the pandemic where a lot of the waste that we've sent abroad has actually been sent back because they refuse to accept it. And good on them. But the countries were receiving a massive amount of money from the UK government to take our waste because they couldn't deal with it in the UK. So rather than actually, they weren't allowed to put it in landfill, they weren't allowed to burn it. So it's like, oh, we'll just sell it to you, but we'll sell it by giving you cash to take it. And they were just then taking it and dumping it into piles. Like I said, then for the poor to rummage through it to try to get any salvage that they could from it. And that's not the way to deal with the waste. You know, we generate more waste in this country than countries double the size or quadruple the size in poorer environments. There was one, we have a plastic coating around a coconut. You know, it comes in its own bloody coating.
That
you don't need anything.
Well.
And you know, bananas coming in plastic bags. I've never eaten a banana. When I was younger, I did chew on one. It doesn't taste nice. You don't eat banana skins. So that's a perfect cover.
Every fruit and vegetable has got its own cover. I mean,
exactly.
What I don't understand is why an aubergine can have a sticky label on it, but a cucumber has to have a plastic wrap across it. Would you just put a sticky label on the cucumber?
This is the thing. It's a lot of it's down to marketing.
Yeah.
Because what can they put on the aubergine to get marketing from it? We can't put too much. It's a strange shape. If you put a plastic coating around it, it's never going to look right.
Yeah.
The cucumber, Morrison's. This is how much cucumbers in this cucumber. 100% cucumber. Well done. It's like there's no need for it, but people then buy it, and the psychological side of it is it's been wrapped in plastic. It must be safer and better. And that comes from so I'm sorry, I'll go off on tangents. Plastic is actually a waste product.
Yeah.
Plastic is a waste product of gas and oil. Yeah. And they try to work out, how do we use all this waste? I know, let's sell the idea that plastic's better. Milk bottles. We used to have a glass milk bottle delivered to our door, and we would, at the end of the day, would finish the milk and put it back out for recycling. It was cleaned and sent back to us.
Yeah.
It was a perfect system. But we were told that milk bottles are unhygienic. We could pass diseases and problems with it. And what if somebody that had that, you know, they might have been a different color to you, or they might be sick or anything, and suddenly you start buying plastic bottles from shops. And of course, Tesco's and Morrison's and everybody else, they're really happy with the idea, because that's a brand new market. Because now you're popping into the shop to buy a pint of milk. And while you're there, you may as well.
You have to buy a whole trolley load, don't you?
Exactly. Who goes in? I personally never pick up a trolley. I always walk around the shop in my hands, because then I can't pick up too much.
Yeah,
the problem is I've got massive hands.
Also, I mean, how can we be untaught how to live a life of convenience? Everything is so damn convenient. You know, I want this outfit, I'm going to buy it, and it's going to arrive on my doorstep tomorrow in 10 tons of packaging. Why do we need to have things instantaneously? How can we ever backtrack from that?
No, I don't think it's an easy task to backtrack from that ease of use, because we pay for the convenience. You know, you don't buy McDonald's burger because they taste good. You buy it because it's fast. It's an instant gratification.
And can still be delivered to your door. It's crazy.
Yeah, the latest Uber Eats, they're now offering to guarantee deliver in 15 minutes. So if I just go, McDonald's, I can have it here in 15 minutes. I don't even have to get up off my bum. I don't even have to do anything.
Everything that's convenient is killing us.
Yes.
And no wonder the NHS is struggling to cope, because everyone that's going through the door, especially on a Saturday night at A&E, is because of their own damn fault, because they're overindulging or doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
But this is where government should be able to kick in at this point and say, actually, we're going to charge you extra for that. You're going to have the fat tax, sugar tax, I called it. But we should have things like that where you're charged more for unhealthy products. Same as the carbon tax. Why wouldn't we tax somebody more for having a bigger carbon impact to the country and to the world? But we can't deliver a carbon tax. The reason why we can't deliver it is because big businesses does not want to do it, because if you delivered a carbon tax, it would no longer be viable for you to get cheap products from cheap countries shipped all halfway around the world for you to sell for £1. Suddenly that cost is now £2, £3, £4. And then it makes it more viable to actually ship, to produce locally. And once you have that, their economy goes, because large corporations require globalization on such a grand scale. It's the only way that large companies survive and make money. Most large companies actually have a worse profit margin than local companies. Their margins much smaller, because they have the bureaucracy, they have the layers of team management and all this. You end up with 15 managers before you get to the boss. And the reason why they have that is because they're such a large organization. They need the management structures in place, but it means that they are a tanker in the shipping yard, lanes, where they spend ages to turn. They use carbon all the time, and they're just pumping crap into the atmosphere all the time, because that's the only way they survive. Small businesses are the way forward. That is the only solution. If I could snap my fingers like Thanos and solve the world's problems, it would be to remove corporations. Unfortunately, we are reliant on those corporations. So imagine if we got rid of Amazon. Tomorrow Amazon decided, actually, we're never going to deliver again. We shut the doors. There'd be so many people unemployed. There'd be so many businesses that have gone under, because they're reliant on the Amazon marketplace. They're reliant on that machine that Amazon have created. And people will go broke. People will go hungry. And there's no one solution in that way. You can't just remove corporations, but what you can do is empower the local smaller business. And if you take that power and actually empower the people to make humanistic decisions, educate them, build them up. And Mobius Capital, my business, is all about changing the world. We want to change the entire world, because my idea is to actually buy 100 businesses, small independent businesses. And if you talk to a normal M&A expert, they'll say, right, roll them up, take 10 businesses and make them one big business, and then sell them to the stock exchange and make lots and lots of money. Sack half the staff, get rid of all this, and you make lots of money and everything's great. I don't want to do that. I'm buying the businesses with the staff, to get the staff to then make decisions on how to run that business. The profits being shared back to the staff themselves, rather than actually going into one person's pocket, mine, unfortunately. Rather than going into my pocket, they're going into the staff's pockets. Because then the decisions are seen as what the impact is. And when you give somebody a decision to say, actually, do you want to produce this for £100, or you can make it for £10, but you're going to pollute the atmosphere? I don't know anybody that says, I'm going to pollute the atmosphere. I don't care. I don't care. I don't need to breathe. I can buy oxygen somewhere. They don't do that. they would rather spend the money. And okay, the £100 and £10 are a very big difference, but usually it's not that big a difference. Usually you're saving pennies on the pound rather than like hundreds of pounds. But that cost impacts profit. It impacts the level of profit that you make, and it makes the business harder. So unless you remove that need to keep fueling the large giants, you can't make it sustainable. So that's why putting the business back into the hands of the people that are running it, they're already there. Their staff wages are already taken up. That's already factored into the business. That allows the business to make better decisions because you've got more wiggle room, and then it can run better, and it can still make some cost savings. It can still find ways of actually making that business better, but it's got to be better for everybody.
Don't you think it's a bit like I mean, my thoughts immediately go to the John Lewis partnership, where, you know, every member of staff has shares in the business. So there is definitely a different atmosphere when you go into one of those shops, because the people seem to be pleased to see you.
Well, yeah,
it's part and parcel of their, you know, their Christmas bonus and what they're going to get at the end of the year.
Strange you should say that. I'm using a scheme called employee-owned trusts. So it's a UK government scheme. So when I buy a business using them, it's tax-free. Right. So you don't pay any corporation tax, not corporation tax, sorry. You don't pay any capital gains tax when selling a business to me. So it could save 20%. That scheme was designed on John Lewis partnerships. It is actually John Lewis partnerships in a scheme that makes it cheap to deliver. Nice. I'm the only company in the UK that's actually doing this as a scheme to buy lots of businesses, to build a group of businesses. Yeah. But there's 500 businesses been created since 2014 using this method. So their business is not necessarily created, but they've been sold by the owners into an employee-owned trust. So there's 500 new John Lewis partnerships. Now, one of the problems with John Lewis, whether you love them or hate them, doesn't matter. The staff are usually older. The reason why they're older is because why would you leave a business that you own part of? Why would you lose that potential in that business and the love that you get from that business, because you're part of it? You've been involved in the creation and the loving of that business. So the staff tend to age. And
yes,
yeah, and the problem with the aged staff is they become less risky. They don't want to take the next step. They don't want to take another step forward, and sometimes they become very dated. And John Lewis has got to the point where they're not really keeping up with the trends. Sometimes they're not going out and doing a lot of the new things because they're seen as risky. And why do we want to do that? Why do we want to change things? And that was the solution of coming up with my business, was follow John Lewis, but do it better. Yeah. So by having a group of 100 businesses, John Lewis, if you're in John Lewis, you stay in John Lewis and that's it. If you're looking for a management role, you're looking for a management role in John Lewis.
Right.
The reason why I went for 100 businesses and said I want to buy 100 is if I've got somebody that's suitable and capable and wanting to do it, they could become a manager in any one of those 100 businesses. And you've got the ability to move people around without them losing that benefit of actually being part of the business they're involved in.
Yeah.
So they can go from one employee trust to another employee trust to another employee trust, which gives you the same benefit as if you're in the public sector and you're jumping businesses every 3 years to gain that promotional experience. You can do that within trust. It's
a bit like, and this is a very crass comparison, in local government, you can be in the education department, the housing department, you know, whatever, and you can jump around, but you're still part and parcel with all the benefits that go with local authority, if there are any benefits that go with local authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a different way of seeing it. I absolutely love the whole concept. And so basically you're standing on the sort of shoulders of giants and going, I like this idea, and let's take it into the 21st century. Yeah. Even, I mean, presumably by the time you get this started and get it rolling, it will, you know, by the time the 22nd century comes along, people will be going, oh yeah, I'm one of those. There will be lots of them.
Well, my plan is I'm currently writing a 100-year plan for my business.
Nice.
And the plan is to have a 100-year plan for every one of the businesses, because the businesses are more likely to last longer.
Yeah.
Because the staff own them, so that, you know, you've got a constant supply of new owners, you've got a constant supply of new talent coming in. But when you own a business, when you're working for a business that you actually have a say in, when things like COVID happens or a recession happens, you're more likely to buckle down and try that little bit harder to keep the business rolling, so they have much more longevity. It's a bit like the cooperatives. Most of the cooperatives last over 100 years. So my whole plan is for each business to last over 100 years, way beyond me. And the idea then is, if we've got 100 businesses and we show that this system works, it should then, my plan is 100 businesses, 10 years. After that, it's just going to keep growing.
Do you think there's going to be like legacy involved, where people that are in the business will be passing it down to their children if there was the...
Well, the way that the trust works is you don't physically own the business, you're a member. But I think what I want to do is encourage them to bring their children into the business as like as man child, as, you know, boys and girls being brought into the business at a young age, saying this is your job for life. Because it doesn't matter if you start in the bakery in this company or you start in the factory at this company, you can move around and still gain that benefit. And if I can show that this is not only does it work, but it actually thrives, other businesses are going to follow suit. A lot of people that do M&A don't like this method. It doesn't make sense because they buy and sell very quickly. They're looking for a 3-year to 5-year turnaround. They don't want to keep a business because there's risk involved. I've decided that actually I don't want to keep the business. I'm buying it for the staff. I'm taking a percentage to keep that group rolling, but the whole thing is actually about the staff ownership. So I'm quite happy to share my model and actually show people this is how this can work. And you can make a lot of money from it. You know, if I buy 100 businesses, each making 100 grand a year, that's a sizable amount of cash coming into the group as profit. I'm taking 26% of that. So if I'm talking 10 million, that's 2.6 million per year coming into my pot.
That's not so dusty, is it? Yeah.
No, exactly.
Not to be sneezed at.
I mean, I've got a whole thing about the group and what the group's going to deliver. So I've got things like so one of the problems with business at the moment is if you want to start your own business and you're in a job, you have this massive problem between, do I spend time on the business and grow the business so I can leave the job? In which case I risk getting sacked and then everything fails. Or do I concentrate on the job, in which case I can't put enough time into the business to get it to grow, so it always just bounces off the floor. And some people are lucky, they've got the cash or they've got the house that they can secure a loan on to keep them going for a year. But then they're putting their personal lives at risk, and that puts a lot of people off with an idea. But they're like, oh, you've got an idea, that's great, it sounds really good. We'll lend you the money, but we need you to sign this piece of paper, means you lose your house if it fails. And that is exactly the response most people should give, because why would you want to lose your house for the risk of a business? 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. Why would you take that risk? But what we're going to do is, if a member of staff comes to me and says, I want to start a business, and this is the business I want to start, we'll take them from their job, move them into the central pot, and their wages will be paid for 1 year. We will give them all the support they need to start the business. So we give them mentorship, we give them advertising, because we've got 100 businesses with staff. So if you're B2B, you've got 100 businesses. You've got 100 businesses with suppliers. You've got all this group of network. Then you've got all the staff that you can sell to if you're B2C. They've got friends and family and all that. So we produce a way of marketing your business. We give you all the support to build your business up. And in the first year, if it fails, we just take you back into the business. But now we've just trained you how to run a business. So now we've taken somebody from the shop floor in a factory that's never run a business, and we've shown them the steps. And that's the best training course. So now we've got a manager on site that can manage a business. If it works, we move you into the part of the business. So that business comes across and it says, right, now you own the business. So you take 20%, Mobius Capital, the group, takes 26%, and your staff are gifted the 51%. So we create another employee-owned trust, because that's the best way of sharing that resource. But you, as the person that's took that risk and saying, I've got this idea, you are the brains behind it, you take a 20% cut in the business. So now you've got a business, and you've got shareholdership, you've got longevity in that business, and you can then take it forward. And again, you've still got the support of the main group to keep you going.
I love it. I love it. So there's two questions really. Firstly, hierarchy. Where does the buck stop?
Right. So the way that the structure has to work legally, because it's the employee-owned trust, to get the tax-free benefits, you have to set up in a certain way. So you have to ensure that the staff have a say in the running of the day-to-day operations of the business. So our plan is it's going to be staff councils that will have a say on the board, and they will actually help dictate who's on the board and who runs and what decisions are made in the business. But on a day-to-day basis, you have a managing director in the same way a normal business does, and the buck stops with them if anything goes wrong. Mobius Capital will provide strategic support and support when there's something going wrong. So like a parachute regiment will come in and help if there's a problem. So as a normal business owner, you know yourself, sometimes there's that stage where something happens, you're like, I don't know who to phone. I don't, oh my God, something's happened. What do I do? We want to provide that support to the business to come in and say, right, okay, we've got this problem. Let's look at it. And if it means raising funds, if it means solving a problem, we solve the problem or we raise the funds. And the idea is part of the money going into Mobius Capital will create a fund that we can support other businesses and help them through problems. So if it's a technical issue, we'll bring in the technical person that's going to help support that business. If it's a financial problem, we'll bring in the finance. But we support that business through those problems. So the buck stops with the individual business, but there's a support level above them.
I mean, not only the potential for the individual and the business that is around them, but also globally, as we've already started at the beginning of the conversation. It reminds me a little bit of a book I read a long time ago called The Dream Manager, where it was a cleaning company. I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm just trying to think of the guy's name who wrote it. And basically, nobody wants to work in a cleaning company, and they had massive turnover problems with their staff, because most people would come and say they wanted a job because they desperately wanted a job. They didn't really want to be a cleaner. And 3 months later, they're off and they found something better. So this company had massive turnover issues. And they got this guy in. Long story short, he became a dream manager, and he would interview all of the staff and say, what's your dream? And it would be anything from owning their own home, starting their own business, learning to speak a language, simple dreams, big dreams, want this fancy holiday or whatever. And then they would work together to plan and plot how to get that done. And as soon as the dreams started being completed and people were so happy that dreams had coming to fruition, people got to hear about it. And of course, they didn't want to leave the company because, well, they might have another dream. And what else if I could do that as well? So not only did they short-term solve their recruitment problems, but they actually had a queue of people lining up to come and work for them. And also best PR ever, come and work for the place where you get all your dreams come true. It was just so many things that were like, and obviously the company grew and they just kept doing it. And it's such a simple idea, just like you've got. It's like, well, why can't we do that? And everywhere I can see your brain has gone, John Lewis over here, then businesses over here, and then the management there, and the hierarchy, and the numbers then start to add up. And it's like, how comes nobody's not thought of this before? It just seems like well done, let's do that. Let's do that yesterday. That's brilliant, So what I'm curious about now is, where have you been in your life that led you to that kind of epiphany of like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do?
So I've had a long industrious career in lots of different things. I've done lots of different jobs. 25 years I've been in IT. Wow. And back in 1999, I got hired. I used to live in Bicester in Oxfordshire, and I got hired to do a job in Peterlee as a service desk engineer, just answering the phone to people. And the reason why I was hired is because I answered the phone. There was no skill set, seriously. Not long previously to that, my first IT job, I didn't even own a computer. I went out and brought my first computer to get my first job.
Oh, wow.
So I taught myself everything. I actually had an interview with the guy and argued with him about the solution, because he had a questionnaire of things to ask people. We were supporting the British Petroleum, so BP, on oil rigs.
Yeah. Wow.
And he asked a silly IT question, and his answer was wrong. So I disagreed with him and proved him right. He proved him wrong. So I got the job. But the site was in Peterlee in County Durham, which is a very deprived area. And back then they'd done an enterprise zone to give companies a benefit of moving to that area where they wouldn't pay any local taxes. So big company EDS, which was a massive international firm, moved to Peterlee to create a service desk for British Petroleum, brought in people. And the idea was to hire local people, but they brought in people from Oxfordshire. I mean, they had no skill set above being able to sign onto a computer and being a bit gobby sometimes when arguing with people. So they could have hired somebody local, but they hired me.
Right.
And initially I was just happy that I had a job, moved around different jobs. And then I came back to Peterlee because I was looking at something else, and I went into Peterlee, and the businesses had moved on. After the 5 years that the tax-free benefit had happened, EDS moved. they moved out. As soon as that they moved out, everything else moved out because there was supporting businesses around them and all this kind of stuff. The infrastructure left. There's still industry there, but they're low paid, low level jobs. This was the idea, this was technical jobs. The local college was encouraged to train people on IT skills. So those people, when the company was first moved there, that went into secondary school, were given loads and loads of training on IT. After the 5 years, they were just about to graduate their GCSEs and the company disappeared. So all the prospects of those jobs went. So those kids that actually continued the career and actually learned how to do IT were either left underutilized, or they had to move out the county. So it didn't help the local economy. And I realized then that the only way to help the local economy was to build small businesses, not big conglomerates, because the money for them went out to the US. Every penny that EDS made went to the US. They weren't paying local taxes. They weren't paying much in the way of national taxes, because they minimized every single earnings, because they had the big corporate body above them, and they minimized the UK tax. So everybody lost, apart from EDS owners. They made a fortune. They were shareholders.
Funny that. Back to square one. We've come full circle, haven't we? Yeah.
So I decided actually the best thing was to start a business or build a business or buy a business, and then help people to start building their own businesses. So I came up with the idea of a foundation where I was going to buy a business and then train the local people to build their own businesses. There was 2 problems with that. One, the people coming into the business don't always want to run their own business. And 2, to buy a business on a commercial basis, you have to borrow money, usually a lot of money. And those people you borrow from want their money back in a very short, sharp way. They also control the business because they put majority share in. And if you go to them and say, I would like to use some of the money that I could pay you to help the staff leave and do their own business, you don't get a very good response. So I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I went through a couple of different stages. I started my own business and I didn't know how to run a business. I failed. I've created an IT company. We came up with an idea of how to do some transport management systems, which is running trucks. It was a great system. It was like a marketplace for trucks, moving trucks. The problem is you needed the sellers of the moves and the people that could do the moves to come together, and nobody wanted to be the first one in. So I didn't know how to plan all that out. So the business failed. Brought a Chinese takeaway, which wasn't actually Chinese. That was an interesting thing. Didn't know how to do anything. Worked out that actually although it had a 5 rating, hadn't been rechecked for over 5 years. So they came and checked it and it'd been running at a 0. So that business just failed. Went through. That's
how you learn, though, isn't it? I mean, you all have to go through that process. We've had a few bright ideas that didn't quite get off.
And I've learned a lot of things through failure. I've learned those lessons. But one thing I realized is, number one, I didn't know who to go to. My family were poor. My dad's a coach driver, my mum was a housewife, which are both very good professions, but not very knowledgeable in how to start a business. So I didn't have anybody to ask. My sphere of influence was very small because I was in IT. I was a geek. I wasn't even in IT. By the end of my career, I was a DBA, which is a database analyst. So I'm the geek of the geeks, which I was even shy to speak to the IT people.
You're officially a nerd, I think, aren't you? If you're not a geek, you're the next one down.
I'm below nerd. I was the nerdier nerd. So I didn't know anybody to go to. I knew the technical solutions, and I'd done a bit of business analysis. I went to Australia to do some business analysis on a big system, and I could do all that. I could understand business, and I found that I was very good at actually reading the business. And within 2 weeks, for instance, in Australia, I was telling them how to build a business better. Brilliant. So I'm very knowledgeable and I'm very good at working things out. But I didn't know who to go to about starting my own business. So I was very good at taking somebody else's business that already started. There was already a block and making it better. But I wasn't very good at starting something at the bottom and building up. So I wanted to make sure that if I got to the stage where I've met somebody that wanted to go through those stages, I'd help them. So I wanted to make sure that I was never going to be the blocker for somebody else, and I wanted to be somebody that somebody could come to. And I've always, I've helped a number of people where I've just given them some advice and some ideas of how to move that business forward and what to do next.
Yeah.
And I prefer to be that person that helps people up and looks back and pulls people up. So I've always I wanted that help myself. I didn't know who to ask. So I sort of sat there on my own, twiddling my thumbs and making mistakes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be not the person that watched somebody make a mistake from afar.
No, that's so true. That is so true, because I think it's really hard to ask for help sometimes, isn't it? And having that team of people around you that are just there just in case. And that, again, going back to Collaboration Global, there are so many specialists and clever people in the community that whenever I'm stuck on anything, I just pick the phone up. I've got somebody to go, I know this sounds like a weird question, but and you're going to get a decent, like, what the hell are you doing that for, Jill? Or more to the point is like, okay, let's start at the beginning. Where did you get this? And you kind of just sometimes speaking out loud to somebody else, you know what the answer is going to be, but it's having who you respect, who you admire, who you look up to, who you're inspired by. Then, because you can't go to your mum and say, Mum, I've got this problem with my business, and she'll be like, oh, don't go and get employed, don't go and run your own business, it's too difficult.
90% of parents would not give you the advice to start a business. It's like the last thing you want to do. My dad, I remember once my dad wanted to start a business on his own, and it was about, he wanted to buy a bus and run bus services because he was a coach driver, so he wanted to run coach services. And he found a bus, he found a mechanic that could maintain it, he found somewhere he could park the bus legally without it being nicked. He found a couple of customers. He got a loan to buy the bus, and on the day to sign the loan, he changed his mind.
Oh, what a shame.
And I remember him going through all the things and like, oh, I need to work out how much money I'm making. And he'd done the numbers, and he was always good with numbers and coming up with all this stuff. And he worked everything out, all on paper, back fag packets. And then he couldn't execute it.
And then safety net. So many people want that safety net, don't they?
They do. And since then, I've always heard, "Oh, business, it's not for us. Oh, it's not something our family do. Our family's not business people. You got to be bad. Business owners, they're bastards. They're horrible. They steal money. They're not nice.
Yeah,
so it's not for us. Don't worry about it."
I can empathise with that. My dad was a docker, and my mum was a carer, looked after my great aunt. And it was like, people like us.
Yes.
We don't do that sort of thing. So I hear. So I've never had, growing up, anybody in my family that has run their own business until I was probably about 19, 20. And we found out that one of my cousins had an insurance company, and we were like, ooh, he owns it, does he? It's all his own. It's like very interesting that, it had been kept quiet. Nobody really knew about it, and it all came out, Yes, yeah.
But that's the family fear, isn't it? Because the family is like, oh, don't talk about Darren. Keep it quiet. Because if it fails, we don't want anybody to know he failed. So we'll keep it quiet just in case. But it's like, you've just halved my bloody sales. I could have sold to these people. He was running an insurance company. Your cousin could have sold all the insurance for the family, and you've done a brilliant deal. But they want to keep it quiet because they don't want to tell anybody, because it's like, oh, it will hurt their feelings if everybody found out they failed. And it's that fear of failure that was built into me, that it was like, I can't do this because I'm going to fail.
So many people are suffering from that ailment that we learned at school. Don't get it wrong. You've got to work hard and be a success, get the grade. And it's like, well, it's just a stepping stone to the next thing. It doesn't really matter. Talking about the past and school, describe to me, just out of curiosity, and again, I've pinched this idea from Simon Sinek. What was your happiest childhood memory? What were you doing when you were at your happiest as a child? What did
probably ripping to shreds something?
Really?
I remember taking a radio to pieces, and this was quite a while ago. Taking a radio to pieces, extending the aerial, boosting the signal, and picking up police band.
How old were you then? I
was about 10, 11.
Oh my goodness.
See, I was always an ideas person. I've always been somebody that come up with ideas. My mum nearly had an accident. Well, she did have an accident. She drove into a toilet block. Ooh. So, not very fast. It was an empty car park. we'd gone to a beach somewhere. My dad said, "Oh, park up by the toilet block. We'll go to the toilet," and she hit it. She's managed to hit the only thing in this empty car park. So I came up with this idea that actually, if I put a remote, so I knew remote controls on TVs, the new ones that just come out, had an infrared beam.
Yes.
And it sent it to the TV and sent a signal.
Yes.
And I also knew that infrared bounces back. So I worked out that if I put an infrared beam at the front of the car, when it bounced back because it hit something and bounced back,
yeah,
I could pick that signal up and then apply the brakes so it wouldn't hit. My mum and dad said that was stupid. Why would you do that?
You could have made a fortune. Well, you still could. I mean, it doesn't.
Well, no, they've done it now. They've implemented it now. I came up with an idea. Do you remember years and years ago, there was an Australian program called Flying Doctors?
Vaguely, yes. Yeah,
so it was basically a couple of doctors in the outback of Australia, and they had to fly everywhere because there was so much distance. And I remember watching one episode where they run out of fuel.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, why don't they just make the planes electric and put solar panels on the wings? And then I figured out that you need a lot of solar panels to get enough power. So I actually drew a picture of a very long winged aircraft with 2 electric motors to actually power the Flying Doctors.
Wow.
Again, my parents are like, oh yeah, that's a really good picture, don't worry about it. Now they've just flown around the world with the first ever electric airplane that pretty much looks like my frigging picture when I was
oh wow.
So I've always come up with ideas.
That's beautiful. I mean, for any parents out there now that have got their 8-year-old drawing pictures like that with ideas, and this is the thing, isn't it? Is having that encouragement, having that kind of like, oh, what's your next step, son? What would you do next? Do you think what's a good idea? And it's just seeing what you see as common sense. And it took a long time to get into action and knowing what to do and how to take it. And I can see now you kind of scaled up big time with, okay, 100 businesses. Let's put 100 businesses together and look after the people within them and create wonderful things for the clients and the customers that are going to come along.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the ideas I had back then, they weren't new. Infrared was there. Brakes were there. A server so I had a radio controlled car, and I worked out that actually when you send the signal, there was a little switch that actually applied the motor. And I said, well, if you applied that to the brake instead of the motor, you could send a signal to that and apply the brake. So I wasn't actually inventing anything new.
Yeah.
And I've never taken an idea out of thin air and went, and made it something brand new. I've used lots and lots of things that existed. The aeroplane, there was already electric motors, there was already solar panels back then. I as a kid, I was a right geek. I had lots of medical problems. I had problems with my feet, where I had to have ingrown toenails taken out lots. So I ended up 6 different ingrown toenails over a 3-year period.
Ouch.
But it meant that I skived off a lot of school.
Yeah.
And as most kids, I had a TV back then, and it was a little black and white one. And I tuned into channel 2, BBC 2, and I watched Open University programs.
Oh.
So I was watching stuff and seeing things like solar panels. What's a solar panel? This is the new way of generating electricity. So I was taking all this information in, and I just reconverted other people's ideas into implementations. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. I haven't invented a wheel. I haven't invented anything.
No.
What I've done is I've taken other people's ideas and said, actually, if you did this, this, and this together, you got a whole new way of looking at things.
You see, this is my whole concept about collaboration. When you bring great people together, they come together and they create something, and all of the solutions to all of our problems in the world are already here. We just have to talk to each other, and with the right heart and the right mindset, bring these wonderful ideas together to support and help as many people as we can. And I think you being in our community is a perfect demonstration on what you're doing. And hopefully many, many, many of our members will be able to support you and help you as you grow this wonderful idea. And we can say that we were in it at the beginning, at the birth, almost the birth, not quite. You've been doing it for a little while, I know, but thank you so much for being a guest today, Darren. I'm fascinated by what you're doing, and I'm really excited to see how we're going to be able to help and support you. If anybody maybe has got a business that they're thinking of selling, or I mean, who are the people that you'd like to contact first of all, but also how can we get in touch with you?
So I'm looking to connect with people that talk to business owners. So anybody that's an accountant, financial advisors, business coaches, business consultants, anybody that talks to businesses, because the whole plan of Mobius, we could buy any business. It doesn't, most of the time when you buy in a business, you look at the finances. I don't, I look at the staff. As long as the initial first 3 to 5 businesses, I need more staff because you need a physical number. So I need 20 staff. And that's the only thing I look for. As long as there's 20 staff and the business is viable, I can do it.
Yeah.
I've also got a plan where I can actually go for smaller businesses. I've actually worked out a way of actually taking 3 or 4 smaller, less than 20 staff, rolling them up into a consortium, and then having one trust above all of them. So you'd have like mini trusts and bigger trusts and all this kind of stuff. So I've got that being signed off at the moment, of a way of actually delivering the same service to smaller businesses.
Wow.
So all I'm interested in is business. As long as there's a business with staff, and as long as there's more than 5 staff, I can make it work.
Fantastic.
So I just need to speak to anybody within business. The best way of contacting me is through LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. I'm every day. My LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in.DarrenOwen1. I was the first Darren Owen.
Oh, well done. You got in there. So it's DARREN OWEN. Just in case people are listening and want to make sure they've got the right Darren Owen. What's your title on LinkedIn?
I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. But hopefully we'll put some links on our post on our podcast as well, so you'll be able to pick those up. Or if you want to meet Darren in person, he comes to the Collaboration Global sessions, which are always on the last Tuesday of the month. You can find us by going to collaborationglobal.org and clicking on the book now button and come along to one of the meetings, or search on Eventbrite and you'll find us on Collaboration Global on Eventbrite and book in. They're free to come along. And if you want to have a specific chat with Darren, you can pop it in the chat space on the Zoom and we'll put you into a little Zoom room with him and find out a little bit more about him. But we always have fascinating conversations with our guest speakers, and maybe you'll be coming to a session where Darren is also presenting as well. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, I urge you to come along to one of those sessions. Thank you so much, Darren. I've loved this. I love this future thinking and the simplicity of what you're taking, ideas that you've already got, and you're building on those and you're creating something that sounds absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you giving the time today. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. As you can tell, I can talk a lot.
And I'm sure we'll do part 2 and part 3 after this as well. Okay. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye.